welcome to another episode of the Motley show. I had prepped this show to begin talking about the efforts that President Obama has recently done to normalize relations with Cuba, but I found myself continually drawn back into the morass of racism, violence, and our collective need to blame somebody else. A week or so back, two police officers, Ramos and Liu, were killed while sitting in their police car. And let's rewind that a little bit. Killed is probably the wrong term to use. Executed is more on point. The shooter, Ismail Brinsley, later killed himself in the subway. In the ensuing hours, it was inevitable that every piece of social media that Ismail had left behind was going to be picked over, picture by picture, letter by letter, and insinuation upon insinuation. And sometimes that can cause problems because we assume we know what he was thinking. But Ismail didn't really leave a ton to the imagination. Showing images of the gun he ended up using and captions that say, "I'm gonna give pigs wings," pretty much stated his intention. It was clear he went out that day to kill cops. He added various hashtags to his images, indicating that at least some of his reason for going after the cops was in retaliation for the recent suspicious police shootings of people like Michael Brown and Eric Garner. Now, as news of this broke wide, a growing number of people jumped into the echo chamber and started screaming about who was actually to blame for this senseless act of violence. You might be surprised at how far the blame went from actually the guy with the gun. From the White House all the way down to the mayor of New York City. Each step along the way was blamed. President Obama, Attorney General Eric Holder, Mayor Bill de Blasio were all said to have blood on their hands by the likes of people like Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, and others in the conservative radio outlets. And don't leave out the folks from Fox News. Now, those directing their anger at Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York City were saying that he didn't actually step out before the Eric Garner protests to actually support law enforcement in all that they do. They felt he didn't speak loud enough. They didn't feel he supported them enough. Instead of actually letting the protesters have their way, take over the streets, and basically take advantage of their First Amendment rights to protest, they felt that he should have done something more to stop it, slow it down, and kind of pull back this anti-cop tide that was starting to roll out. Also tied into this was a statement because Bill de Blasio has a son who is black, and he actually told him at one point to be careful of cops. So let's stop right there and actually talk about this point for a minute. Can you be supportive of police as a whole while decrying the unnecessary violence and the misconduct that has been going on recently by some police officers? You can. It's absolutely necessary to do that. To support the whole, you have to be able to pinpoint those who are not upholding the image of those in the group. It is without a doubt that many policemen and women put their lives on the line day after day to keep us safe. And many of their brave actions and their sacrifices are never shown on the daily news. We don't hear about them every day on the blogs. Those are things that usually get left unsaid, the good things. And some of them are actually buried for their safety and ours. Yet with the increasing prevalence of digital photography and smartphones, more now than ever, the cops and everything is in the public eye. And that public eye is wide open and unblinking. So when someone disgraces the uniform of a police officer by overstepping their bounds and abusing the trust that is given to them by the citizens, that is flashed across news feeds and Twitter streams within seconds. It's a catch-22 for the law enforcement people out there for sure, but there are steps that can be taken. First off, recognition of each person as an individual needs to be remembered and reminded on both sides of the argument. Not every kid in a hoodie is a gangbanger and a thug, and not every cop is a racist and a power-hungry, trigger-happy gun maniac. Bad actors on both sides are dirtying the window that we look through to see the other side. Next, each side has to be willing to clean house. Cops can no longer hide behind their badge as a shield that protects the entire force from blame. There are always going to be bad cops, ones who fail to remember that to protect and serve is not just something written on the side of their car. When those people are caught, the rest of the force can't circle the wagons around them and protect them from any sort of justice or blame. It's actions like that that keep the public from believing that there is true equality under the law. The same goes for us in the citizenry. We cannot continue to approach every situation as if the police are against us. And we also can't think that every person who was killed by a police officer was some angel before that happened. Some certainly are honest mistakes, and they will continue to be made, but to believe that every bullet leaving a police officer's gun finds a purely innocent bystander is ridiculous on its face. Now, those two steps are only the beginning, but there are important steps each side needs to take on the path to understanding. The people who are screaming from the rooftops that this is actually Obama's fault or Mayor Bill de Blasio are actually just adding fuel to the fire that is currently simmering on the blacktop of America's cities. They are irresponsible, irrational, and frankly, they are just using every situation to blame someone who they already hate. When I heard driving home that one conservative radio host was actually waiting to find out the Islamist connection to these killings, that was the last straw. I actually ended up having to come home and change the topic of the show that week just so I could point out how terribly stupid and dangerous these people are. Now in the end, after we actually look at evidence, who knows what's going to come out actually about the shooter. But some of the things that have already come out is that he has had a history of mental illness, which is something that most of the people in the gun debate have said we agree on, that people with mental illnesses should be kept away from guns. There's also a whole nother killing that this guy was responsible for just a couple days prior that seems to be his ex-girlfriend. So this wasn't a guy who just went out to kill cops and that was cops only. It looked like he might have had a killing spree that was just beginning, and he probably just wanted to go out death by cops and make himself a martyr. Now the only people who are actually playing into this martyrdom are the people who are saying that he had more than just a death wish. So what do you think? How much does the media take responsibility for fanning the flames in situations like this? What about opportunists who jump in front of the first microphone they see just so they can throw bombs across our TV screen? If you think one side is right, which one and why? Thanks for watching another episode of the Motley Show. You can like, favorite, share, subscribe, all the pretty little buttons are down below. Thanks for continuing to watch. I know I've been off my schedule a little bit because there's been the Christmas break and a little bit of illness. I've been sick. We've been changing everything around in the house, so a lot going on, but things should be getting back to normal shortly. So stay tuned for next week, and here's a little bit of Logan.
Go, Logan, go.
First off, recognition of each person as an individual needs to be remembered and reminded on both sides of the argument. Not every kid in a hoodie is a gangbanger and a thug, and not every cop is a racist and a power-hungry, trigger-happy gun maniac.